Welcome back, listeners. You've journeyed with us through the cold proposal, the austere wedding, and the explosive clash that resulted in a kiss that changed everything. In part two, we delve beneath the Earl's granite exterior. Bella will uncover the truth behind Sebastian's crippling cynicism, a devastating betrayal from his past that serves as the ultimate wall between them. Prepare for the quiet intensity of secrets, the comfort of unexpected care, and the agonizing confusion of a love that is constantly being pushed away. Let's step into the shadows of Whitmore House. Part 4, Secrets and Shadows. The atmosphere in Whitmore House following the heated argument and the ensuing fiery kiss was not one of renewed formality, but of charged, awkward silence. Sebastian retreated into an even deeper well of severe control, avoiding Bella's gaze and communicating only through notes left by his valet. He treated the kiss exactly as he had promised, as an aberration to be buried and forgotten. But Bella could not forget. The memory of his lost control, the raw passion beneath his icy facade, pulsed beneath her own composure. She watched him, now with an added layer of frustrated curiosity, desperately seeking the man she had glimpsed in the study. One afternoon, seeking refuge in the library, Bella found a small, locked mahogany box tucked away on a high shelf behind a row of ancient Greek texts. Curiosity, sharp and undeniable, urged her on. She eventually found the delicate silver key, a match to the key Sebastian often carried on his watch chain, hidden beneath a stack of maps in his private desk drawer. Inside the box, she found not state papers, but a small collection of faded, water-stained watercolors and a handful of letters tied with a brittle silver ribbon. The letters were from a woman named Ilara. Bella's heart sank as she read them. They were passionate, deeply affectionate letters written to Sebastian years ago, speaking of a shared future and promises of love. However, the last letter in the sequence was a devastating farewell. Ilara wrote of her inability to face a life of limited means, stating coldly that she was marrying Lord Harrington, a man twice Sebastian's age, for his title and wealth. The realization struck Bella with painful clarity. Sebastian's cynicism, his fear of vulnerability, and his ruthless enforcement of an emotionless contract were not inherent coldness. They were deep scars from betrayal and grief. He had loved completely and been abandoned for material gain. He didn't just distrust love. He feared the devastating vulnerability that came with it. His icy mask was a shield forged in the fires of heartbreak. Bella carefully placed everything back, locking the box and returning the key. Her anger at his coldness was replaced by a profound, achy understanding. She now knew the ghosts that haunted their marriage, and they weren't hers. Sebastian's armor was rigid, but life has a way of finding the cracks. A week later, Bella succumbed to a sudden, virulent influenza that swept through the city. She was confined to bed, weak, feverish, and miserable. Sebastian's immediate reaction was to summon the most eminent physicians and to issue stern, detached instructions to the staff. He maintained a physical distance, yet his anxiety was palpable. One chilly evening, when the fever broke, leaving Bella damp and shivering, the housekeeper brought her a bowl of thin broth. Sebastian, who had been standing stiffly by the fireplace, dismissed the woman with a curt nod. He approached the bed, his face unreadable but his movements hesitant. He pulled a chair closer and with a hand that was surprisingly gentle tested her forehead. "The fever has broken. Thank the heavens," he murmured, his voice stripped of its usual formality, laced instead with a raw tenderness that sent a warmth through Bella deeper than the soup. He didn't leave. He sat beside her for over an hour, reading silently from a technical document, the lamp casting the room in a warm, protective glow. When Bella struggled to sit up to take the broth, he put down his papers. He lifted her pillow, adjusting it carefully, his large, capable hands surprisingly delicate. Then, without meeting her eyes, he took the spoon and began to feed her, steadying the bowl with his other hand. "You must eat to regain your strength," he instructed softly. "You have a public appearance to make in a week." It was still an instruction, still couched in terms of duty, but the action itself was one of profound, unexpected care. It was the purest form of intimacy their marriage had yet seen, tending to her in her weakness. Another moment of tenderness emerged when Sebastian defended her publicly. At a dinner party, a particularly nasty gentleman, Lord Carrington, attempted to make a joke about Bella's imprudent past. Before Bella could formulate a sharp retort, Sebastian intervened. He did not raise his voice, but the entire room fell silent as his granite eyes fixed on Lord Carrington. "You are mistaken, sir," Sebastian said, the words weighted with the threat of social annihilation. "The only imprudence I see here is your inability to discern when a gentleman ought to hold his tongue in the presence of his host. I believe you have enjoyed the last of our hospitality." The man was instantly crushed, banished from their circle. Sebastian had not merely defended her, he had fought her battle as his own. Yet every time intimacy flickered, Sebastian would retreat, terrified by the heat he had allowed in. He would spend subsequent days away from the house, or, when home, would work until the small hours of the morning, returning to his solitary chamber only when she was certainly asleep. Bella felt the sharp sting of his confusion. He would show her the fierce protectiveness of a husband, the unexpected care of a lover, and then retreat, leaving her confused and aching. They existed in a painful limbo, a marriage teetering between intimacy and distance. Bella had seen the real man beneath the Earl, but Sebastian, paralyzed by the betrayal of his past, refused to let that man exist for more than a fleeting, unguarded moment. He preferred the safety of the ice, even if it meant living in perpetual, agonizing coldness. The quiet understanding in Bella's heart warred with the frustration of his continued emotional withdrawal. She knew she was falling in love with the complex, scarred man he hid, and she was equally terrified that his walls were too high for even her fire to breach. Part 5, the breaking point. The strained equilibrium of their marriage, balanced precariously between fragile intimacy and rigid distance, was destined not to last. The catalyst for its destruction arrived in the oily form of Lord Philip Ashford. Philip had watched Bella's ascent from society outcast to the formidable Countess of Whitmore with mounting jealousy and fury. Sebastian's protection had robbed Philip of his intended victim, and the Earl's cold, absolute defense of his wife had been a public humiliation. Philip sought revenge, targeting the visible weakness in the Whitmore's partnership, Sebastian's deep-seated distrust. The opportunity presented itself at a grand dinner hosted by a prominent marquise. Sebastian, though present, was engaged in a deep conversation with a political colleague, leaving Bella momentarily isolated. Philip slid toward her, his smile sickeningly familiar, a predatory gleam in his eyes. "My dear Bella," he murmured, his voice low enough to be conspiratorial. "You look magnificent. Whitmore has certainly secured you well, hasn't he? Though I imagine life with the Ice King is hardly thrilling compared to our own little adventures." Bella immediately stiffened, her face hardening. "You are mistaken, Lord Philip. My life is precisely as it ought to be, and I find its order deeply satisfying." "Ah, but I remember your spirit. You were never meant for order," Philip pressed, leaning closer, attempting to recreate the illusion of past familiarity. "You and I, we understood passion. It's a pity the Earl doesn't seem to know how to ignite it. Perhaps you miss the fire we shared?" Bella knew the game he was playing, a desperate, malicious attempt to reignite gossip and manufacture a moment of impropriety. Her heart swelled with a sudden, fierce protectiveness of the marriage she now deeply valued, however flawed it was. She looked him dead in the eye, her voice utterly devoid of fear. "You misunderstand the nature of my marriage, Philip. It is not built on the shallow, reckless passion you mistake for feeling. It is built on a foundation of duty, respect, and loyalty. And while I have no doubt that you miss the prestige of being associated with a countess, I assure you, I have no desire to relive any moment of my acquaintance with you." She delivered the final blow with devastating clarity. "I am the Countess of Whitmore, and I am devoted to my husband. Do not approach me again. If you attempt to spread further gossip about me or my marriage, the Earl will not merely cut you socially, he will crush you professionally." Philip, stunned by her loyalty and the cold threat, stammered a protest just as Sebastian ended his conversation and turned toward them. Sebastian saw the scene from across the room. Philip leaning in close, speaking intently. Bella standing rigid, her hand gripping her fan until her knuckles were white. He did not hear her words of loyalty and defiance. All he saw was the man who had supposedly caused her ruin, pressing himself upon his wife, and Bella, though clearly agitated, remaining in the conversation. The scene triggered the devastating memory of Alara, the woman who had used his affection, then left him for a richer man. His scars, buried beneath layers of control, tore open. He saw Bella, not as the woman who fought for his name, but as a potential traitor, easily seduced by a charming rake, just like his first love. He crossed the room with grim purpose, his features frozen in a mask of terrible judgment. He simply took Bella's arm and led her out, ignoring Philip's sputtering attempts to clear his name. They did not speak until they reached the privacy of his study at Whitmore House. Sebastian threw his coat onto a nearby settee, his usual composure completely gone, replaced by naked, raw anguish disguised as accusation. "You stand there and allow him to speak to you." Sebastian's voice was strained, dangerously quiet. "After all the damage he has done, were you so keen to be reminded of your supposed adventures with the wretch?" Bella recoiled, shocked by the accusation and the sudden irrational cruelty. "How dare you? I was telling him exactly where he stands. I was defending our name, Sebastian, and I was declaring my loyalty to you." "Loyalty?" he scoffed, his face twisting with bitter cynicism. "You know nothing of loyalty, Bella. You are a woman who accepted my proposal out of necessity, not principle. Do you think I am blind? You were humiliated by him, yet you stand there and talk of fire and passion with the very man who dragged your name through the mud." He advanced on her, his eyes blazing with the pain of his decade-old wound. The vulnerability she had glimpsed earlier was gone, replaced by a devastating, protective rage born of fear. "I know what you are doing. You are pretending to be content, but you yearn for what he represents," Sebastian accused, his voice thick with anguish. "You are all the same. You crave the superficial thrill, the excitement. You are no different than Alara. You will wait until I am vulnerable, until I have foolishly lowered my guard, and then you will betray me for the thing you truly desire." The comparison to Alara, the definitive rejection of her spirit and her truth, was a physical blow. It was the moment she realized his fear was greater than his dawning affection for her, and that she would forever be measured against the ghost of his past. Tears sprang to her eyes, not of sadness but of utter devastation. She had fought for him, nursed him, defended him, and in return he had branded her a liar and a traitor. "I am not Alara," Bella whispered, her voice shaking with hurt pride. "I have never been her, and I never will be. But thank you, Sebastian. Thank you for making it clear where I truly stand. I am nothing but a transaction and a necessary shield, and you will never see anything more." The emotional wound was too deep. Her pride, which had held her together through the entire ordeal, demanded retribution. She turned on her heel and walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" he demanded, suddenly realizing the gravity of his outburst. "I am going to consider my options," she replied, her hand on the doorknob. "I married you for survival, my lord, but I find that I cannot survive in a life where I am constantly accused of being a woman I am not. I cannot live with your mistrust. I'm torn between pride and the love I was foolish enough to feel for the broken man I thought you were." With that, she slipped out, leaving him alone in the study, surrounded by the silence of his devastating mistake. Sebastian, the earl who prided himself on control, sank into a chair, his head in his hands, finally facing the horror of what he had done. He had driven away the only person who had ever dared to stand in his defense, all because he was terrified of being hurt again. Part 6. The Fire It Sparked. Bella spent the night in her secondary dressing room, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the flicker of a solitary candle. She was heartbroken, exhausted, and desperately trying to reconcile the protective man who fed her soup with the cruel man who had accused her of being a traitor. Her mind was settled. She could not remain where her honor was perpetually under suspicion. She would leave Whitmore House with the dawn. Before she left, however, she needed one last thing. Driven by an urgent, overwhelming need to understand the source of the agony that warped Sebastian's soul, she went to his study. She retrieved the silver key she had used weeks ago and unlocked the small mahogany box containing the remnants of his past love. She removed the wilted letters and watercolors, and underneath them she found a slim, leather-bound volume, a hidden journal. It was not a record of his accounts, but a private repository of his torment. Bella opened it, her hands shaking. It was filled with unsent letters and confessions, spanning the years since Alara's betrayal, and even covering the weeks of their own marriage. She read with mounting disbelief. "I married her for duty, but I find myself observing her, the way her spirit refuses to break. the way she defends what she believes is right. She is fire, and I am the frozen field, yet I fear the spring that comes with her approach. It is a terrifying, unfamiliar warmth. She was ill today. I was undone by her weakness. If she were to truly leave this world, the order I prize would be irrelevant. I sat with her, and for an hour I was only Sebastian, not the Earl, not the guarded fool. I was a man terrified of loss. I saw her with Ashford tonight. My past consumed me. I am a coward. I used Alara's name to wound her, to drive her away, because I cannot bear the possibility that she might willingly walk away on her own terms. It is easier to be cold than to be vulnerable. God help me, I have ruined the one good, truthful thing that has entered my life since my heart turned to stone. The journal was a raw, aching confession of his torment and his longing. It revealed his emotional terror, not his cold indifference. Bella closed the book, her decision to leave momentarily forgotten. His cruelty stemmed from his terror, his accusations from his overwhelming, desperate fear of losing his control and being abandoned again. Sebastian was in his library, staring out the window at the bleak London morning, a man consumed by the utter ruin of his own making. He knew she was gone, or would be soon. He heard the door open, but he did not turn, unable to face the woman he had irrevocably wounded. "You don't have to look at me, Sebastian," Bella said, her voice clear, strong, and entirely devoid of tears, "because I know exactly what you look like. I know the man you are, and the man you desperately try not to be." He finally turned, his face etched with genuine suffering. "Bella, please, I cannot take back my words. They were born of fear, a terrible, irrational fear." "Silence," she commanded, shocking him into stillness. She held up the leather journal. "I found this. You hide behind layers of ice and duty, but here, in the shadows, you confess your truth. You hide your heart because 20 years ago, a greedy woman chose wealth over you. And you punish every soul who approaches you, including the woman who chose to defend your name, by comparing her to your ghost." She walked toward him, her fury now mingled with a fierce, absolute demand for honesty. "I told you I married for survival, but that is no longer the truth. I remained because I saw the good man beneath the armor. I grew to love the complexity of the Earl of Whitmore, the man who is tender under duress and fiercely protective in public. But you, Sebastian, will not accept a love that is freely given, because you are terrified it will be freely withdrawn." She threw the journal onto his desk. "I am giving you a choice, my lord, not between duty and scandal, but between fear and life. I will not live as a suspect in my own marriage. You must finally face the true feelings you have locked away, or I will leave today, and you will forever be the icy, broken man you fear you are." Bella's confrontation, supported by the devastating proof of his own journal, was the final assault on his defenses. He looked at her, her vibrant spirit, her unwavering loyalty, the fiery passion that had finally demanded his truth, and he shattered. Sebastian crossed the distance between them in two desperate strides, crushing her against his chest. His arms wrapped around her, not in a display of control, but of drowning, agonizing confession. "I cannot," he choked out, his voice thick with unspent grief and rising passion. "I cannot bear the thought of losing you. I accused you because I saw you leave in my future, and it terrified me. I have been so cold, so arrogant, so wrong. I only learned to feel again because of you, and I did not know how to handle the warmth. I love you, Bella. I need you. I cannot remain cold any longer." He finally broke, releasing years of pent-up fear and betrayal. Bella held him, feeling the heavy burden of his grief lift from his massive frame. She understood that this confession, wrenched from him in torment, was worth more than 1,000 romantic declarations. He pulled back just enough to look at her, his lips finding hers, not with the angry demand of their first kiss, but with a deep, profound tenderness, a passionate reconciliation fueled by honest love. "Begin anew," Bella whispered against his mouth, tears of relief and love tracking down her face. "Not as strangers bound by duty, but as husband and wife bound by fire." 6 months later, the social season was in full swing. At the Duchess of Richmond's grand annual ball, the Earl and Countess of Whitmore made their entrance. Society still watched them, but now not with mockery, but with curiosity and a growing, grudging admiration. Sebastian, the once icy Earl, led his wife onto the ballroom floor. He did not merely escort her, he looked at her. As they moved through the crowd, he kept his gaze fixed on her face. The severe lines of his mouth softened, his granite eyes radiating an undisguised, possessive devotion. He leaned close, his voice a warm murmur for her ears alone. "They are watching, my countess." Bella smiled, her eyes brilliant with love and triumph. "Let them watch, my lord. Let them see the fire you tried so hard to hide." They danced, no longer performing a duty, but enacting a love story. Society watched in awe as the man known for his frost gazed at his wife, his fiercely spirited, dearly loved wife, with an intensity that promised a lifetime of warmth. The cold proposal had achieved its true, passionate purpose. What a journey. Thank you so much for listening to the Earl's Cold Proposal. We hope you enjoyed witnessing the fall of the formidable Earl of Whitmore and the triumph of the spirited Countess. If this story of slow burn romance, powerful emotion, and ultimate devotion captured your heart, like this final part to show your support. Subscribe to the channel for more captivating stories. Comment below and tell us your favorite moment. Was it the study kiss, Sebastian's fierce defense of Bella, or his final broken confession? We love hearing your thoughts. Until the next time, may your own love stories be filled with fire.